I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain. We bag enough. I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain. We bag enough. Poppin' tan model BC couldn't brag 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 enough. I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain.
And welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and joining me is my co-host Jim Sarro.
Sorry, Bob. I was pouring out a little liquor, celebrating the end of the regular season there. Sorry, I can pop on right away. But the regular season is behind us. An amazing regular season it was. And now we have all conference to look forward to. And then, of course, the Horizon League tournament gets kicked off on Monday. So let's go.
Okay, yeah, you going a little early, man, because I know what time we're recording this. We might have a conversation about that a little later. But Jim, you can find on Twitter at Jim Sarro. You can find us on the web at horizonroundtable.com. You can find links to all of our social media accounts and sites where podcasts are available at horizonroundtable.com/subscribe. Jim, I did finally add the Reddit account to the Reddit link to our Reddit account, our Reddit page on there too. So for all of you who are Reddit inclined, there's a link on horizonroundtable.com/subscribe. And of course, you can always sign up for email alerts as well. Become a patron, patreon.com/Horizon Roundtable. We're doing the off-season features again. You will get exclusive access to those. And Jim, I actually post the little teaser to some of all of you of the features we did last year. It's kind of a teaser to show you what we did last year. So be on the lookout for that freebies. And if you're interested, you can sign up for as little as $1. Patreon.com/Horizon Roundtable. And of course, you can always donate to us at horizonroundtable.com/donate. And to your point, Jim, the regular season is over. Tournament time has arrived. And as I think I mentioned last week, we are in fact going to be doing a tournament edition of Expanding Horizon Preview Edition. That should be super, super fun and super, super complicated. Maybe. I'm hoping everything goes chalk, man. I'm hoping and there's a very specific reason why I hope everything goes chalk. Because if everything goes chalk... Of
course, you load it up in your FanDuel account and you want to make money. Of course, simple as that.
Why does everybody... Yeah, I do not. I'm probably the only one of us who doesn't. I don't know.
What's the real reason you want to go chalk?
Because of the Sunday standalone game, which would feature the two lowest remaining seeds. And if everything goes chalk, it would be a 4-5 game, which means it would be Oakland and Green Bay, a Greg Campy, Doug Gottlieb tournament game in Indianapolis. Sign me up, man.
I was told by people deeply embedded in the Green Bay athletic department that Kerry Rupp would coach that game just out of abundance of caution due to his 1-0 record against Oakland, if in fact happened. I can't confirm or deny it. I was just told by people that are in the know.
That would be you know what? That would actually be kind of a stroke of genius on Doug Gottlieb's part. But does that mean he'll end up like? Does that mean like? Then I do not envy the official who gets it at the end of the first round game. Then
picture Doug sitting courtside with me drinking Horizon League Ambers as Kerry works his magic offensively to an upset over the 4 seed. That would be hilarious. Although not going to happen because that is not on the cards, but certainly fun to talk about.
Yes, because I know. Yes, so it's possible. I don't know. I know. Green Bay this week did very. Green Bay did very well this week in their one game. They basically went wire to wire on Youngstown State. It wasn't even. I mean, they made it look They made it look pretty easy too. Which again, I don't really. I struggle to see. I'm struggling to figure out what exactly happened to Youngstown State. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, Green Bay has done an outstanding job this year. They are Um, they got a home game in the for the first round. But Youngstown State, I don't really understand what exactly happened, and it happened in the front court too. That was the place I thought they were going to not have any problems this season, and they just did.
Well, I can sum up Youngstown State in one statistical category. They played 2 games in the state of Wisconsin. They lost both. They lost at Green Bay in a game that was they never were really in it. Green Bay kind of pushed out to a lead and held their lead pretty steady and then extended the lead. Youngstown went a combined in the state of Wisconsin 14 of 42 from three.
Ugh,
That's not going to get the
yeah.
job done.
And for
When
a
they
team
take
that
as
shoots
many.
the three as much
Yeah.
as they do, that
Yep.
is problematic. But yeah, and and again that was the 3-pointer was their strong suit. Was Youngstown State's strong suit this season, and in Wisconsin it was not. So I don't know.
Yeah. Against Green Bay, they're 6 of 21. I mean, Chris Carroll had a really nice game. Chris Carroll was, performing at a super high level. But I think
But
that,
that's kind of been the case all season. Chris Carroll has been kind of the one consistent thing Youngstown State has had. Everything else has
mhm,
been super inconsistent, but Chris Carroll is certainly not that. Certainly,
yeah.
the model of consistency.
Well,
And
and I would say if the most fire your team shows in a game is in the last 30 seconds when Rob Stroud misses a reverse 360 dunk in
I felt
garbage
so
time.
bad for him when that happened.
Yeah, but they got like it. They were on the court immediately afterwards, and then in the handshake line too. They're still going at it. If that's the most fire you show all day, then you're doing something wrong. And that's where Youngstown has to find themselves because they did. They were playing really well again, and then they got to 8 and 10 and had some momentum going, and that's eviscerated on them. And now they're staring at a game against Robert Morris on the road. So definitely a tough week for Youngstown State. And then conversely, Green Bay in that game, they went virtually wire to wire. They didn't score the first basket, but they scored and took the lead thereafter and led the rest of the way. And in Green Bay's case, they just shot really well. They rebounded really well with that, guard lineup that they have. They carved them up and got to the paint. Justin Allen finishing left-handed layups again. Just a really impressive day for Green Bay. But for Green Bay, don't bury the headline, 63 points allowed. I mean, also an amazing defensive performance
Oh
for the
yeah.
Phoenix. So
That was
definitely
yeah,
a
that's
momentum
something
builder
that
for the
we kind of
Phoenix.
and that's something we got to talk about with Green Bay because that part of it has been extreme has been very very has been a key component of that because the defensive end Green Bay has you know just like everything else with Green Bay this season, it's been night and day from last season, and that component, of course, is the most. And again, I hate to belabor the advantage. I hate to belabor how well they performed in how well they performed up front. Um, but against a Youngstown State team that again I truly believe that this is a team that I thought for sure was going to have an advantage in the front court, and they just kind of didn't, and I was kind of surprised by that. Specifically, because I was, it was. I mean, look at the rebounds. Look at the rebounds yesterday. Green Bay had 40 of them. 40. And Youngstown State, who I really think size wise is a bigger team than Green Bay, they only had 24. That's insane to me. And it's just yeah, I think I think it's a testament to the overall development of the team. And you obviously saw it. Green Bay has rebounding sources that you're not really you don't really expect. I mean, yes, you're going to get you're going to get rebounding from Marcus Hall, but they also got it from Rudy. They also got it from CJ O'Hara. They got it from Caden Wilkins. I mean, it was coming from everywhere. Everybody was grabbing boards all over the place. And Youngstown State was not able to keep up. And again, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Green Bay was super connected in all phases of that game in terms of their defensive effort and working together as five guys to stop Youngstown State. Same thing on the glass. some guys were, are tasked with boxing out, other guys were tasked with going and getting the ball. But at the end of it, they just worked five guys cohesively. They only played eight. The three guys that came off the bench didn't play a ton. So Green Bay went a little heavier with their main guys, but those guys were really, playing a beautiful brand of team basketball yesterday in all phases, whether it's offensively, defensively, or rebounding. And then, they shot the ball 60% field goal percent. So part of the rebounding advantage is that Youngstown didn't get a chance to get any defensive rebounds because Green Bay's offense was so effective.
No, that was another key component of that too. One of the other things I was really impressed with is the ball handling. And I know Green Bay has struggled with the turnovers from time to time. This game they did not. They only had 6 turnovers. Now, mind you, Youngstown State only had 3. But yeah, Green Bay held on to that ball really well. Rudy had an outstanding game. He had 7 assists against 1 turnover. So he definitely showed out for senior night, which from what I was able to see was was a very festive event for both the players and the fans.
Yeah, I actually appreciate they did their senior night presentation after the game. There's a while there for Green Bay basketball where they weren't sure they were going to win these kind of games, and so they would do it before the game so people wouldn't be in a foul mood or would leave. But a large amount of the crowd stayed for the duration of the senior night activities, which lasted over 20 minutes, and they definitely just had a belief that like, hey, we can do this after the game and it's going to be fine, win or lose. But they felt really comfortable with the fact that they're probably going to win. And you talk about those turnovers, like in the second half, Youngstown State started a full court press against the Phoenix, and the Phoenix handled that with relative ease. And so that's what was really impressive for Green Bay. Green Bay doesn't force turnovers because they're clogging up the lane, trying to get back on defense. They're not pressing, so they're not necessarily seeking to force turnovers. But teams are trying to turn them over, especially as Green Bay knows how to take the air out of the ball. They absolutely are the best team at taking the air out of the ball in this league. And if they have a 12-point lead, we've seen them now be able to milk that down to the finish line. Whereas a 12-point lead in the first conference game against Robert Morris, they blew it in 3 minutes and lost. Now they took a double-digit lead late in the second half, and just you couldn't speed them up, you couldn't force them into anything, even when it's tempting on when they get the press break. It's tempting to keep pushing ahead and go for maybe a contested basket. They didn't. They just pull it back out, and they're just so comfortable working late in the shot clock. When they're playing right, they are really good. The challenge for them is just getting that consistency of how they play, game to game, because they've had some atrocious games. The first Wright State game, the Campbell game, which is a non-conference game, but they had a few that you're like, oof. But when they're playing their game, they're going to be very difficult to beat in the Horizon League tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, but let's move on to Robert Morris, because Robert Morris, their week is the reason they're the 2 seed. Because as you know, and we talked about this last episode, there was an opportunity for a giant log jam for us to give with a bunch of tiebreakers trying to figure out who was who was going to be seeded where. But Robert Morris had the big game for them was against Detroit Mercy, and we'll talk about Detroit Mercy after this. But the way the way Robert Morris handled Detroit Mercy on Wednesday. And they were able to, because Detroit Mercy was definitely nipping at their heels. Detroit Mercy came to play against Robert Morris, but Robert Morris pulled away at the end, and they kind of showed why this team is. They're one of the few teams, Jim, that played up to where we expected them to play this year.
They took the scenic route to get there because they were kind of
they did.
slow to start in conference play, but they've really poured it on and are playing super dangerous. And it's impressive because they went without Al Vargas for periods of time down the stretch, and he was their starting point guard.
And he
And
was still out. He's still out too, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they have been able to. I know he didn't play. I saw the Detroit game. I know he wasn't playing in that one, but in that game they only had 6 turnovers, even without their starting point guard. So that's
because Darius Livingston has been an outstanding fill-in for him. The freshman Darius Livingston he's had an outstanding second half of the season. Wish he had played more, because he definitely would have been in the freshman of the year conversation for sure.
Yeah. And they have just waves of big guys. You think of Josh Hill isn't in there, and that I can't think of Oko. Was that how you say it?
Oka.
Not that he's the greatest big man, but I mean he came in there and swatted some shots out against Detroit, and so they just got a little bit from a lot of guys that are playing great basketball. But in that super close game, I mean, relatively speaking, because Detroit had the lead for long stretches of it. 17 free throws made for Robert Morris was a difference. And then, of course, Detroit Mercy. If you look at every game on Wednesday in the league, every team that lost shot abysmal from 3-point land, and Detroit was 4 of 16 on Wednesday.
Yeah, and that's kind of been Detroit Mercy in that game kind of reverted to the Detroit Mercy at the beginning of the season, which, as we know, did not do very well with 3-point shooting. But again, that's kind of a testament to what Robert Morris is able to do against teams, because they did that against Detroit Mercy. They definitely did that against Cleveland State, especially in the second half against Cleveland State. But you look at Robert Morris, the way they're set up top to bottom. Yes, they do not have Al Vargas, the services of Al Vargas at the moment. He did not play against Cleveland State either. But I don't want to play Robert Morris in this tournament. Do you? I don't think. No. They're a very dangerous team, Robert Morris, and this is a Robert Morris team. I like to. This is a Robert Morris team that is the only team that swept Wright State in the regular season too. And if not for a couple of hiccups during the conference season, we'd be talking about Robert Morris and not Wright State as the conference champion. But be that as it may, Wright State was able to Wright State did what they needed to do and finish up at the top of the heap. But do not count out Robert Morris for sure. They definitely have the pieces, and I feel like, and maybe it's because it took them a little while for all of those players not named Ryan Prather to acclimate. But they've acclimated. They've acclimated quite well. Yeah,
they've got it rolling, and when you think about, they did what they needed to do this week. They got 2 big wins. And remember, there was an outside scenario where they could still win the championship at Wright State. Wright State tried super hard to give that scenario some play. I mean, they didn't exactly, blow anybody away. But then by the same token, when you think about what Wright State did, they went on the road at Fort Wayne. They went on the road at Northern Kentucky, and they went 2-0. And so while they weren't the prettiest games, and in the case of Northern Kentucky, they were getting blown out for a long stretch of time there.
They were down by 19 in that game. 19. In that game, I thought I was almost gonna. I mean, if there was another game on, I probably would have watched that, because I thought for sure that game was gonna be over. And then Wright State just clamped down, and they were able to win that game. Michael Amari with 0.1 second left, getting the rebound tip, and that was a big thing for them down the stretch. Just being able to stay in the game and being able to, And I feel like I'd have to do yet one more mea culpa, because obviously at the beginning of the season, I was not convinced that Wright State was going to do what they did. Jesus. Boy, am I wrong. Super wrong.
Well, and Wright State, you have to give them all the credit in the world for this. Like, when I was filling out my all-conference ballots for the Horizon Roundtable, it's very difficult to pinpoint a player statistically and be like, that's a first team, or that's the player of the year. I mean, they were 15-5 and don't have a guy that necessarily jumps out as like the player of the year, because they have so much. They just have so many guys, the wave of guys And that is really the sum of
That
the
was
parts
what made it
being
so
greater.
hard. I
Yes,
mean,
they're
that's
still
seriously
good. They're
what
so
made
deep.
it so hard.
Yeah, they're such a deep team and they have so many guys that give them something. That's why they're so good. They don't rely on just one guy to bring
Yeah.
it for them. Like sometimes in this league we'll have a team. Like I use an example of Fort Wayne has
Hmm.
the leading scorer in conference play, but
Hmm.
you know they don't have a lot beyond that. I mean, they have the other two
Yeah.
guards, of course, but like they just it's about those three guys. Wright State, it's about eight guys. Eight guys
Oh
doing
yeah,
something. It's a
absolutely.
very
And I'm
impressive
not.
team basketball.
I guess I'm not really used to that with Wright State because in years and even last year, you always had like a core of like one or two or three guys that you could pinpoint to, and they'd be your scorers. Like last year, you had Brandon Knoll and Alex Hubricks. Um, year before, Tanner Holden. You know, that was kind of the pattern, in the Scott Nagy era and last year at the beginning of Clint Sargent's at the beginning of Clint Sargent's tenure. To your point, and the other thing too with Wright State was had a for historically. Wright State has had a super short rotation. If they played more than 8 guys in years past, it was because they were blowing a team out. This year, it is a completely different story. They will get guys. They will get guys off the bench that you haven't seen in a while. Like this game, Brian Tumu, we haven't seen him in forever, and he was in the game today. He was in the game against Northern Kentucky. So there is a definite shift in dynamic with Wright State that I feel like they suffered by historical comparison because of that, because we go into the preseason, we're thinking, okay, we're used to seeing Wright State rely on like two or three guys, and we don't see those guys, and we don't see these guys, and as a result, I feel like they're going to struggle, and nope, that wasn't the case. That
Well, even
absolutely wasn't the case.
think about that. Like we didn't know who it'd be. Then it was Michael Cooper. Michael Cooper gets
Yeah.
hurt, and they don't miss a beat. And so it just
No,
tells
they
you
don't.
the strength of their team. It's the old the strength of the wolf is in the pack, and that is for sure in the Right State case where they're at. And they
Mhm.
obviously didn't have great games this week because they're probably a lot closer than they wanted them to be. But then by the same token, if you're looking at around the league and saying who's most battle tested right now, you got to be feeling pretty good about Wright State because they just went on the road and got two very difficult must-need wins.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I have to stress the importance. We talk about how young this team is. I've talked about it all season, but I don't want to discount the impact Michael Amari made, the one senior most guy on this team, the impact that he has had on this team. And it was, I mean, if there was kind of a symbol of his importance, it's that last shot because he has been the presence in the paint for Wright State. He is consistently putting up double doubles against Northern Kentucky, 15 points, 16 rebounds. The winning shot he got off an offensive rebound. Nobody could stop him in the paint. And that it that I feel like I underestimated how much of a core piece Michael Amarbe was going to be this season. Is he gonna be was he the guy that scored the most points? No, generally not. But was he the guy that was always on the court and got them what they needed in clutch moments? Yes, absolutely. As
Bob,
evidenced by the game against Northern Kentucky.
and so Bob, you think about just the way that NKU game unfolded. You had Northern Kentucky go the length of the court. They get Donovan O'Day doing Donovan O'Day things and
Yeah.
getting the basket, taking the lead, and then they come back down. They get to tip him. But Amarbe, to your point about scoring, the league, if you go on the league's website, only publishes the top 25 scorers in the league
Yeah.
for conference play. He's not in it.
No, he's
You,
not.
you will not find him on that list. And
No.
so somebody who's that important, it really is impressive for a guy to be that impactful for a season and not necessarily. Now he's in the top 5 for rebounds, but he's not
Yeah.
that impactful, in terms of like he's not a 20-point per game scorer every game, but he's just
Well, when
there.
you look,
He's
but when
just
you
there.
look exactly, but when you look at this Wright State team, he doesn't need to be. There are a million different scoring options, that once again I wasn't sure they were going to have this season. Wrong again, Bob. But yeah, I mean, but that's kind of how this team is built. Like you're not going to have, and it's kind of funny that the way this team is built, you were not going to have, you don't have like a I think maybe one of these guys. I think maybe one of their player. I think maybe T.J. Birch. T.J. Birch is one of the is in top 25 in scoring. I think Michael Cooper was able to uh, get get in on the top 25 himself. But yeah, by and large, it's been but not very high in the top 25. But it doesn't matter. It legitimately doesn't matter because I think I wrote about this. Any one of these guys can come in and hurt you at any point in time. By the way, I
Yeah.
am waiting for Dominic Pangonis to go off in the tournament because he is the only of all the starters. He's the only one who hasn't. He's one of the. I believe he's the only one who hasn't led the Raiders in scoring this season for any of the games. I'm waiting for Dominic Pangonis to go off because he's due.
He's a fantastic player. He's perfect. Like that length and he can stretch the court out a little bit and just does a lot of different things.
Yeah.
He's a like totally slept down with their team. Like almost like just a guy. Even though on any other team in this league, he would be more than likely, if he played his same game, a featured player and a possible all conference
sure.
player.
Sure, absolutely. All right. Well, on the flip side, we got to talk about Northern Kentucky. What Northern Kentucky had? I don't get it. I don't get Northern Kentucky, Jim. I feel like they should
Dr.
be
Jekyll
better
and Mr.
than.
Hyde.
It is just. I mean, I don't. I mean, somebody's gonna have to explain Northern Kentucky to me at a certain point because I just am struggling with trying to figure out their whole deal this year. I mean, non-conference they were great. In the conference they were meh. They were 10-10, and in this conference 10-10 doesn't get you a lot. And in this case, it got Northern Kentucky the 7 seed. And I know Northern Kentucky fans weren't happy with what happened last season. I don't think they're all that happy about what's going on this season. So yeah, I guess the question becomes, does Darren Horn's seat get a little warmer? Not this year, not this year for sure. But next year, maybe? I don't know.
It says a lot about the quality of your program, where if a person has what was their final record this year, Bob?
They were 18-13. I know they were 18-13.
And what were they in conference play?
They were 10-10. They were 500.
That's what I thought. But it says a lot about the quality of your program when a 500 season would be looked upon as like, meh, we're not getting it done. A lot of programs in this league can't have their, when their bottom falls out a little bit, it's way worse than 10-10. So you have to give some credit just to the quality.
Looking at you, Cleveland State.
Looking at you, Green Bay, for the last 5 years prior to this one. So I'm just saying, I've seen it where, really good, what you think are really good programs, they hit a rough patch and it goes way sideways. For NKU, they're in a little bit of a rough patch for where they've been in this league, but their rough patch is, a patch that most of the bottom teams, the IU Indy would take 10-10 in a heartbeat.
Oh, absolutely.
And, in terms of where
the way things went for Milwaukee this season, they would have taken 10-10
for sure. And they almost got there. If you think about but when I think of Northern Kentucky this week, they had a great offensive week. They shot 51% against Cleveland State. They shot 53% against Wright State. But when you think about against Cleveland State was 5 of 24 from 3. And if you're taking that many threes and only making 5, you're not going to win basketball games. And so it's no surprise that Northern Kentucky got an 11-point win on the road. But against the Wright State, who also shot 56% and out-rebounded them, now your margin of error becomes a lot smaller. And that's how you get susceptible to the 10th of a second left tip in, is that you didn't put a team away. You played one end of the court, but not the other. And so
Yeah.
that's, for Northern Kentucky, they are extremely dangerous in this Horizon League tournament. The top end players are there when they have it humming, or if, as an example, Donovan O'Day he's basically an unguardable player, and he's an unguardable player in my mind. The best you can hope for him is that he can slow him down because you can't stop him. And so against whoever's going to play them, I know who's playing them, but like when you're playing them, you gotta hope.
It's good. I'm sure you breathed a sigh of relief that it wasn't Green Bay, because both of those games were kind of knockdown dragouts in the regular season.
Yeah, they both went to the wire. Green Bay had to win in overtime on the road, and Donovan O'Day went bananas against Green Bay in Green Bay.
But it's funny because I'm looking at their record, and they're 10-10. But look at some of the games that they lost. I mean, yesterday against Wright State, they lost by 1 point, last second shot. Green Bay, the first time around, they lost in overtime. Robert Morris, they lost in overtime. And let's not forget the Purdue Fort Wayne game where they lost by 2 points. There are so many opportunities, and again, the first Green Bay game, they only lost by 2 points. I mean, Northern Kentucky had at least a handful of opportunities to, if things had gone better, they'd be, they would have been. It's not that they're bad; it's just they weren't able to kind of overcome. And I can point at least 5 games that was the case. And if those, things had gone a little better for them, I don't know. But, the old saying, Jim, if your grandma had balls, she'd be your grandpa. I mean, yeah, that's basically what we're talking about here.
Yeah. I think long-term for Northern Kentucky, the challenge for them is they are about to get decimated from, end of eligibility issues. LJ Wells, Goresger, O'Day, their main guys are not going to be returning. And so, and not because they're going to leave, just because I believe all those guys are out of eligibility.
That is correct. Yes.
So from a standpoint of like, they had a down season, but they had those are 3 really good players. And so they're going to have to figure out what to do to replace those guys. And I think Cale Robinson, I can't remember, he's got to be close to done too. But with those guys that come from a different level, you just never know how many years they get of eligibility. So and KU is a tough team to peg because just like Youngstown, the talent is there to win any given game, but the putting it together and making that happen hasn't always been there. And so for them, there's no time like the present starting on Wednesday.
Yeah, true. So I think the big thing, so but to your point, their challenge is going to be the same one that they had in the offseason last year, is that they're going to have a lot of at least this time they know that they're going to have a lot of, they're going to have roster spots they need to fill, as opposed to last year when they weren't sure and they, the portal kind of hit them hard. This year is just graduation running out of eligibility. That's just it. It's, there's no, there's not really anything wrong with that. So, Cale Robinson is absolutely out of eligibility for sure. So they're gonna have to start. They're gonna really have to dig in and figure everything out over there.
But
probably
it's
in a better position. They're probably in a better position than they were last season because at least they know that they've got some spots to fill, and they got some they got some spots to fill, and they've got some teams to target. But that's fun. We talked about Milwaukee. I hate to say that Milwaukee's lucky that they're the 8th seed, but the way things have gone for them, they kind of are. I mean, they definitely. And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, like I said, Jim, if Green Bay had been the 8th, if Northern Kentucky had won the game, they would have been the 6th seed and would have had to go to play at Green Bay. And that would have been a fun thing because those were knockdown dragouts the first 2 games. So I would not have envied you and your fans, Jim.
You got to play somebody. You might as well play the ones that are hardest. But one thing I look at with Milwaukee, they're They got a big win. They
Yeah, they
needed a
did.
win. It was 2 weeks ago that their fans were worried about having to play IU Indy in a play-in game. And
Yeah.
to go from being possibly the 10th team, I know 8th is not where their fan base and where
Oh,
Coach
of course
Lundy
not.
and their no, but they played their way
But at least
out of
with
a
that,
hellstorm. Yeah,
sure.
they
But at
played their way
least
out of a hellstorm, and you
they
got to give them
did.
credit.
You
And
do. I mean, it was
they won
not
a
a good
big
team.
game
Yeah. Yeah.
this week. They won it.
Well, I mean,
They didn't have their guys. They won a big game, and yeah, I wouldn't say they have momentum, but I also would say for them, Detroit's probably the matchup that they want in the
yeah.
Horizon League tournament. And this is not like speaking out of school. They've had trouble beating Coach Campy in the Horizon League tournament. So for them to avoid Oakland, that's big right out of the gate
Yeah,
because
true.
Campy's ended their season a couple times in the last few years, and to get
Yeah.
Detroit. I'm not saying Detroit isn't a good team because they obviously are. They're the 3 seed. They did, they went to Oakland and got a massive rivalry win. Basically, you could say they restarted
Sure.
the rivalry finally.
Yeah.
And when you think about, they're a very good team with
Or
great guards.
actually, let's be honest, started the rivalry because the Metro series has been so lopsided over the last since its inception. It's been so lopsided, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that Detroit Mercy. We'll talk about Detroit Mercy's week, but specifically this game against Oakland. But yeah, to your point, this to your point. Milwaukee gave Detroit Mercy headaches a couple of weeks ago in their game in Detroit, and you can definitely bet that they're gonna give them headaches again. But I do feel, but I mean, the issue is with Milwaukee is that I don't know. I feel like they definitely came through against Youngstown State as they needed to. You do see some signs that they are absolutely poised to have to you know be to definitely do better in the future. Um, when you got a guy like Stevie Elam, a freshman, who has done so well this season. Obviously injuries aside, I know he's out for a few games. But to have him play the way he has, and also Josh Dixon as well, um, you have those guys coming in, and guys like Sekou Kone, um, those guys are definitely a good core that Bart Lundy can work with next year. And one of the other things that not to look ahead to next year, you know, you don't know. You don't know if a guy like you don't know if a guy like John Lovelace, clearly he's going to be a redshirt. He might be back next year. Same thing with Seth Hubbard. Both of those guys probably. I mean, redshirting, yeah, probably. But even if they don't come back, you look at who they have coming back, or theoretically coming back. You got guys like Elam and Hill, and a guy like Isaiah Dorcius, a guy like Chandler Jackson, who we didn't think we were going to see this year, but came out of nowhere to definitely be a contributor. You got to see a guy like Sekou Kone, who you probably weren't going to see a lot of had Faison Fields not been in and out with injuries. I think the one thing that Milwaukee is going to need to work on next year, and I feel like this is going to be a big problem for them. Yeah, and again, we'll talk about their situation against Detroit Mercy in the preview podcast. But in the middle, up front, they're going to need to look at getting more size in the offseason.
Yeah, they're going to be devoid of a lot of the size that they had, and part of that was why the expectations were so high this year for Milwaukee.
Oh,
when
yeah.
you not just had size, but you had experienced size,
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's a big difference in basketball. They always say it takes longer for big guys to develop, but when you have Fields and Danilo, and these guys are late in their career with the size and skill that they
Oh,
had,
yeah.
those are the kind of players that had they not been injured, that's what probably has Milwaukee in a way different position in this league than where they ended up. But yeah, they're going to need some they're going to need some size, but they're going to need some size on Wednesday because, Detroit, while their strength of their team isn't the inside, they get
Oh
enough
yeah,
from Jeter and Maiden and those guys to
yeah,
make you sweat a little bit. So
sure. So, well, let's jump into Detroit Mercy because this was certainly this was Orlando Lovejoy's week for sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
love
Um,
Ploy, love Ploy. But yeah, you think
uh,
about he really played it down the stretch of the season. I mean, for me and the
mhm,
way I view the league, he played himself from like a third team guy maybe to a
mhm,
first team guy in my mind,
mhm.
right down the stretch. He was amazing when they needed it most.
Yeah.
And yes, they only split their week, and that has them in the 3 seed instead of the 2 seed or whatever.
Well, they split that team. They split this week because the only other team the team that's doing better than everybody else is Robert Morris. I mean,
Yes,
but again, they were in. We talked about this earlier. They were in that game. They were
not
definitely in that game, and then they
they
jumped
had like a nine
into
point lead in the
yes,
first
they
half.
did. But then Robert Morris did Robert Morris things, and you can't really, you don't really have an answer for that when they get going.
No,
You
you
just
do not.
don't.
Yeah.
But the big game, of course, was the game against Oakland, and for years we've been hoping, our expectation was this game, the games between Oakland and Detroit Mercy, in our minds should have been a much more intense rivalry, and they just haven't because Oakland has been up to this season so much better than Detroit Mercy. It's true.
Yep.
Even during the Antoine Davis years, Oakland found a way constantly to overcome, and they were able to do better. They were able to outperform them constantly. And that's exactly what happened. This year has been the exception, and this game in particular was the exception. And it needs and moving forward, it needs to be the rule for us. We need to have this rivalry actually be a rivalry. And if the last game of the season between them is any indication of what we can expect in the future, we're finally gonna get a rivalry. We're finally gonna get that rivalry. Finally. Finally. Because
I think
those are
the
fun games to watch. They are fun games to watch.
Yeah, the arena
I mean,
is
it's probably
perfect.
not fun for Detroit Mercy or Oakland fans, but it's fun for me. It's probably fun for you too.
I'd say the arena is perfect for this, packed house, 4,000 people. Everybody's, right on top of the court. Like it's the kind of, when that you get the juice going for a rivalry game, it's a perfect building
Yeah.
for it, first of all. But when you think about the game itself, very close game. Statistically, it was pretty even.
Yeah.
Where Detroit won this game for my money is 6 turnovers. Like in an
Yeah.
environment like that, when the game really mattered for a lot of reasons, not just because of the rivalry, because of the Horizon League standings and seedings and a lot of other reasons. And with their relatively young players, I mean, obviously Lovejoy and Jeter are on the older side, but a lot of the other guys that get minutes are young. For
Oh
to
yeah.
only have 6 turnovers in the game, in with everything that's going on and everything that's on the line, that to me is the most impressive thing that they did this week because it's a 6 point game. So if you have, 12 turnovers or 11 or whatever they normally average, now you're probably looking at a tie game as opposed to a six
Sure.
point game. And, when the sphincter gets a little tighter, you never know what's going to
Yep.
happen. So,
Sure.
um, anyway, just an amazing win for the Titans.
Yeah, absolutely. To your point again, this is kind of what Monty has done. He is basically, yes, he's got, yes, of course he's got guys like Jeter and uh obviously Orlando Lovejoy. Um as the, as those guys for these first two seasons to kind of be kind of the rock, the veteran rocks that can be the foundation for him to build on. And they've done an outstanding job in bringing London Maiden in to get to bolster what they can do up front has or definitely shore up front has been important. But the it's definitely, and this is why I thought they were going to do as well as they did this year, because they made me look not crazy too, by the way, at least not in this regards, Jim. Um, but the combination of having that leadership with that veteran presence with Lovejoy and Jeter, combined with the youth. I mean, you've got guys like Nadu and Callum Bay, and to a lesser extent this season, Nate Johnson, who had a year under their belt. And once you have Lovejoy and Jeter moving on after this season, you're not going to drop off because you're going to have that core, because you're going to have guys like Nadu and Callum Bay kind of be the foundation for next year, and they're going to have they're going to have that experience with this program, with the ability to kind of teach the younger guys, and that's kind of it's pretty clear that's how Monty has operated as far as building this team is concerned. And he's done it with a lot of our teams in this conference, good, better, and different. They have built through the JUCOs and the transfer portal. Monty's done it a different way. He's done it with the freshmen, by and large. Does he benefit from having transfer portal guys? Yes, of course he does. But the core of his team moving forward after this season is going to be the guys that he's grown, he's developed from freshmen, and it's definitely something that we want to. And I feel like he's ahead of schedule by finishing third this season. Something I didn't think we were going to be talking about, because when the way they started the season was, let's be honest, atrocious. But they turned it around. They turned all of it around, and now they're going to be. And that, to your point from earlier, I mean, yes, that Detroit Mercy Milwaukee game is going to be tough, and like I said, we'll talk about that in the preview podcast. But yeah, you know, it's not something we've seen in a while in Detroit, Detroit Mercy for sure.
Yeah, when you think of Detroit Mercy, like something I'm very interested in, I was telling a friend of mine that's a college coach that there are two guys that are on Detroit's roster that don't play a lot, and it's because of the abundance of really talented young players in front of them.
Yeah.
But there's two guys on that team that I think could be really good players in this league that I would love, if like any team in this league I think would love to have, and that's Keyshawn Fisher and Nate Johnson. So having guys like that who are probably Horizon League ready players at this point in time, or certainly will be by the time conference season kicks off again in December. I'll be curious to see how, like the process of recruiting and developing young players, and those guys have some experience under their belt, and see how they go when they get the opportunity, because there'll be some, movement with graduation, in front of them, where they'll get a chance to probably play again. Now, granted, it hurts guys like that you have Spratt and Nadu in front of them who are really good players.
Well, not just them, Lance Stone too. I mean,
yeah, but he's, at his size, he's the little guy, right? Like that's, I guess.
Yes, he is.
He's 5'11". Cotton. Yep, and then Cotton, you have who's come on this year as well. But I think it's just interesting. Like they have the young guys, and then they have guys that we're not even thinking about that have played, have some experience, and probably when given the opportunity next season, are probably going to be making a meaningful impact. So Detroit is a fascinating test case for 2026 college basketball. Really, the only thing you worry about with them, it's with any good team, right? But like just making sure nobody is, you got to protect your house, right? Like hopefully they're able to put together the financial packages as needed to keep Tyler Spratt and to keep TJ Nadu. Because if they can keep these guys together, they're on the verge of like not just being a factor, but being the factor in this league.
Absolutely. Now, on the flip side, we talk about Oakland. I said that I feel like I said this already, but I feel like that short rotation is really getting to them, because I think they're only generally playing like 7 or 8 guys, and I feel like that short rotation is really starting to have an effect on them, especially in the second half of the season.
Yeah, they played a murderer's row. They have very limited amounts of guys to keep playing, and they have a couple guys that they bring off the bench, but they really haven't earned the trust of Coach Hampy. If you think of like Coy Thurman's an example, like he gets in there a little bit, but they're going to ride Brody Robinson
Oh
to the
yeah,
end of this thing. Like,
of course they
but
will, as they should, because Brody Robinson is one of the best players in the league.
He was my pick for Player of the Year. Like, I think he's the most impactful player in the league, just in terms of what he brings to the table. But from a standpoint of Oakland, I somehow between now and Wednesday, they're going to have to get themselves righted and be ready to go. I mean, you have those three big guys. You have dynamic players like Wells. I mean, Xavier Wells is like, that guy is amazing. That guy's amazing. I love that guy. Like, I love watching that guy play. And then Brody, I think, is the best, most impactful player in the league. So there's no reason for Oakland to, not be ready to go on one. They have everything you need. So now it's just a matter of like, forget about what has happened and be ready to go on Wednesday. But another kind of Northern Kentucky-ish team where you just don't know. Right now, we just don't know what we're going to get game to game. But when they put it together, this is as good as they're as good as it can be in the Horizon League at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, my concern is I just hope they haven't run out of gas. That is my primary concern right now. Just playing such a short rotation. My concern is they're approaching E on the tank, and that could be very problematic going into this tournament. Very problematic.
I feel like for Oakland, of course, I'm not a college coach, but I would like to see them slow things down a little bit. Like, I actually think that might help them because in the half court, like true half court, like their progression of plays that they have and all the tricks that Campy has.
Oh, sure.
Dude, like he can outfox pretty much any coach in this league. I hate saying that. Like, I hate saying it, but when I watch and I see 40 years of experience and, he just runs like he'll run a set and then the next time we'll start in the same set and it'll be a different read off of that. And he just goes through like 3 or 4 of those in a row and you're like, and they get a bucket every time off of that stuff. It's like, to me, slowing Brody Robinson down, I know he's a horse and he's a speed guy and you got to let him run a little bit. But like when you have the advantage of Garrett and Hogue and Buru and then you have dynamic guard play, like, Wells is probably one of the few guys in this league that could take a guy off the dribble and dunk in the half court. Like,
and he has.
And he has. Like, so to me, I'd almost rather see them play slower. And I think that might help mitigate that they're on E as opposed to, playing that higher tempo game. That's what I think I'd like to see. But of course, that's why I'm co-hosting the Horizon Roundtable and not being employed by any of the 11 member schools in this league because I know about nothing that's of importance at that level. So whatever.
All right. Well, we got to close out the show talking about IU Indy and Cleveland State. Which one do you want to go through first? I mean,
IU Indy versus Cleveland State. I think
IU Indy. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that because they're in the play-in game. They basically solidified they were in the play-in game. They were in the play-in game. IU Indy did, solidified their spot in last place. 2 weeks ago, Cleveland State solidified theirs when Milwaukee won. Not necessarily because they lost, even though they lost twice. Cleveland State.
I kidded around with you last week about they were on a mission to have their season end, and I mean they did nothing to disprove that this week. But they don't have Nessa. They don't.
It is amazing the impact that not having Dan Nessa in this lineup has had. It is, you cannot deny they've lost 7 games in a row, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, like 6 of them, Dan Nessa wasn't playing, and so you can. It's in when you have a team that is so reliant that I didn't realize how reliant they were on Dan Nessa until the last, the stretch of this season where they've lost 7 in a row. I didn't realize that until then, because if I'm not mistaken, when they played Wright State initially and beat them, I don't think Nessa actually played in that. I can't remember if Nessa played in that game, and I don't think he did. And I'm like, Wait, and I don't. I'm trying to figure. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember when they beat Wright State in the at the Nutter Center, and I gotta check this out. That I'm pretty sure that when they played them, I'm pretty sure that Nessa and Josiah Harris. Oh, I'm sorry. No, never mind. Nessa
I think it
actually
hurt though.
did. No, Nessa did play. Harris didn't. And Nessa had 31 against Wright State. You take Nessa, it's pretty clear. You take Nessa out of the equation, and again, I didn't think this was going to be the case because you do have some dynamic scores like Trey Beard, like Jaden Lipscomb, like an Ice Emery off the bench. But if you
Well, you
take
think
them
of,
out, but you take
I was
Nessa
saying,
out of the equation, it just all falls apart, and it's all falling apart.
so much of their offense when they were really rolling, you think of like the lane line extended, all the way to the 3-point line. They throw the ball to Nessa at that spot. Point guard comes over, and what makes that work is Nessa's a factor off the dribble.
Yeah,
When you look at the other big guys that they would place in, play in his place, they're not a factor off the dribble. They're not a factor to get to the hoop and score. They're not a factor to find the open guy if the help comes. Nessa is the reason that simple play, that point over action works because, if you try to go with the shooter, he's going to find Nessa, and Nessa's going to then be playing in the lane, you know, with an advantage over,
yeah.
the defender. So without Nessa, basically their whole offense is not going to work. But as far as this game,
And it hasn't. It
it
hasn't.
hasn't. I feel like
I mean, that's not
IU
saying
Indy is
anything bad about him. It's just that's what's happening.
Yeah, I feel like IU Indy is still fighting at a reasonably high level here, but the wild card in this particular game is that IU Indy wants to play fast. Cleveland State wants to play fast. Cleveland State wants to shoot a lot of threes. They're going to shoot a lot of threes. Like that's playing with fire. IU Indy is
Yeah.
not necessarily a great defensive team. So
Hmm.
as much as things haven't gone well for Cleveland State, as Nessa has been unavailable to them in
Sure.
this particular game, it's still a team that's a good matchup for Cleveland State
Yeah.
overall.
Which
So
which we will talk about in much greater detail on the preview podcast since they're the first game. They're on
yep.
Monday.
So
So, but yeah, I think this I mean, to your point, IU Indy has. It seems like as far as IU Indy is concerned, they seem to be in a better position than Cleveland State. It's not a great position because they lost both games this week but against Oakland and against Oakland and against Purdue Fort Wayne. But if you look at that Purdue Fort Wayne game, they had some chances. They definitely had some chances to get to pull away from Purdue Fort Wayne. It was just a matter of Purdue Fort Wayne just did they just had a better dynamic than IU Indy, and it's not to say for IU Indy it's not a matter. I feel like it's a matter for them of being able to. I feel like their off season is going to be definitely kind of building. It's pretty clear that the system we've seen kind of how the system works. The problem is the system needs some players. Uh, Definitely needs some players that are kind of who've spent their entire yeah. They need more Division One players. That's what they need.
yep, they're
I mean,
they're down.
there's no way to sugarcoat that. They got all these guys. They got all these players, and they're good players. But there you can see kind of the difference between guys who've spent a good chunk of their college playing in Division Two as opposed to guys who are coming in from the transfer portal in Division One, and you know, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, again, that's not to say that the guys on this team aren't good. Yeah, but compared to the rest of the Horizon League, they just weren't good enough.
You can have a team with
Kyler D'Agostino, and to an extent Finley Woodward notwithstanding.
you can have a team with a couple of guys like that. You can't have a team with all guys like that. And that's what they ran
Yeah,
into. But they're trying to establish something more important in terms of like, hey, just straight up how we play. Now they have film to show recruits. They need
yeah.
length. They need athletic ability.
Oh, they do.
Against Fort Wayne, it's a 6 point game. Fort Wayne, who's not a good free throw shooting team, did go 21-25, so they can't defend the
Yeah.
free throw line, right? But they
No.
got a little in a 6 point game. They got a little lucky. But the thing
And I
that
think that's another part too that actually has nothing to do with their abilities as a player is that IU Indy ran into the constantly this season ran into the issue of fouls.
yeah,
Um, and maybe
yeah,
that is a byproduct of the system, but this season it was pretty prominent.
that's
And
a
they've lost
that's more of
games
a
as a
by
consequence.
that's a byproduct of speed, strength, athletic ability. That's what I see. But what I was going to say with the IU Indy, we talked about it last week. Fort Wayne, you probably can't turn them over. They only had 7 turnovers against IU Indy in the pressure defense because they have 3 guards on the Division 1 level, that can handle the ball and move at a speed that IU Indy's guys can't. So, there's from a standpoint of IU Indy needs more length up front. They need more
Yes.
dynamic guard play. They'll probably get it. I
Oh
honestly
yeah.
think they'll get the type of guys that they need. The challenging part for them was it IU Indy that had like a no cursing policy.
Yes, it's them.
Yeah, that's the challenge. Like, how do you get the kind of
Really?
guys that?
You really think that's the problem?
How do you get the kind of athleticism we need from guys that don't use the F word? I mean,
I mean,
you
you
ever
could.
you ever been to
I
a
mean,
basketball game? You ever been to a basketball game and listen to these guys talk?
have you ever? Come on, this is our. Hello. How many times have we dropped? How many times have I dropped f bombs on this podcast?
Yep. So I think that's where.
I'm incapable. I'm kind of incapable of doing that. I don't know how players don't do that. I don't. Yeah. But then
I'm
again,
just.
I'm not a Division 1 basketball player and never have been and never pretend to be.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I,
but I feel like they have. I feel like they do have. I feel like structurally there is some promise with this. With the system, it's just going to be a matter of and having some more time to recruit because Ben Hallett had to put this team on the fly in
in
May.
May. Yep.
As we have, and I think that might have been an issue too because as we have seen historically putting your game together in May doesn't really necessarily bode well for you. I'm sure you
It does
noticed
not.
that. I'm sure you noticed that the year before again in Green Bay a little bit.
And 6 years ago now, when Will Ryan got hired in June, like he had to, assemble what he could in June. I just, I'm not diminishing at all like having high standards. I think that's
Oh
great.
yeah,
I think the challenging part though for IU Indy is like they just need, to your greater point, an overall step up in length, athletic ability.
yeah,
I think that's some shooting, to work with.
and I feel
But
like they will.
but
I feel like
you
they
can't
will.
have as I say, you can't have a team full of guys who aren't on the level. You can have a couple of them, and they can be the hustle pieces. And think of like a Green Bay is a good example. They don't have the most athletic ability, but they play a system. They play to that style, so they play to their strengths of having the smaller, slightly slower, not quite as strong guys. And I'm not ripping on the guys that they have. Just like they would be the first to tell you they're not the most physically imposing off the bus. They're not the all Greyhound team. They don't look great coming off the bus, but they get them on the court and they play together. They play in a way that fits their abilities. IU Indy's
Sure.
style is going to require some guys who, maybe a little longer, a lot more athletic, in my opinion. So be interesting to see what
Sure.
happens with them. Anyway, I think
And
that's
it's
probably
all,
a good spot to.
I feel like, and I do, and to close out, I do think getting a guy like D'Agostino, who absolutely was definitely the core of this team, having him back next year as kind of that senior leader, I feel it's going to be it's definitely going to be a foundation where they can build upon moving forward at the very least. So at least they got that going for them.
Yes,
So.
they do.
All right. You are correct. It is time to go. Next episode, I don't know what the heck we're gonna do next episode. You know what I gotta do, Jim? I gotta find Jordan Burnfield because this whole Sunday game thing is gonna really screw up our usual tradition of getting coaches on. because I don't know who's actually going to be there, and I don't really want to figure it out. Maybe I'll hit up Jordan Burnfield. We can get him on here next episode. Otherwise, it's just going to be you and me, and we got to figure that out too.
Nope.
So,
Rob, I'm drawing my line in the sand. It's Burnfield and Okafor or nothing. Boom or bust, my friend. Boom or
oh,
bust.
you
We
want
get
to
them
make
both.
an Okafor too? Oh, good.
Yeah, that's
Then
right.
I could ask him, hey, you listen to this podcast, don't you? You
You've
do.
read my mind. You know why
You
I want him
do.
on. You do.
All right. Well, then I guess we're gonna have to figure that one out, Jim. Until then, horizonroundtable.com. You can find all of our past podcast episodes, all of our articles, including coming soon, very very soon, probably the afternoon that we drop this episode off. All league teams and our postseason award for both the men and the women coming out. If you listening to this sometime later on this week, they're already out, so go read them. You can pull us up where podcasts are available. You can pull us up on your Amazon or Google devices. And oh, by the way, tune in next week, or definitely tune in like right after this, because we're going to be dropping the tournament episode of the Expand Your Horizon Preview Edition. We're dropping that probably right after this one. So whenever, be it that episode or a regular episode, until then, thank you all for listening.